Heavenly Father, I pray for everyone watching this video right now. May you bless them with peace, joy, and breakthroughs in their lives. Amen. Hello, my wonderful family. I am so glad and grateful to have you here with me today. Your support means the world, and I truly don't take it for granted. Before we dive into today's powerful story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from this channel. I can't do this. Gabriel Chen's hands trembled as he stared at his reflection in the mirror of the church vestry. In 3 minutes, he would walk down that aisle and marry a woman whose face he had never seen. A woman every other man in their social circle had rejected. A woman who, according to the whispered rumors, was so scarred by a childhood accident that she hadn't shown her face in public for over a decade. Welcome to another story that will change how you see love, sacrifice, and the masks we all wear. I'm about to take you on a journey that will question everything you think you know about beauty, worth, and second chances. You're doing the right thing, his business partner David Kim said from behind him, adjusting his own tie. The merger with the Lancaster family will secure our position for the next 50 years. Besides, she's probably grateful someone finally said yes. Gabriel's jaw clenched. That word, grateful, as if marriage was charity. As if love was a transaction where he was doing her the favor. The truth was more complicated. The truth was that Gabriel Chen, at 35, had built an empire worth $12 billion, but couldn't build a relationship that lasted longer than 6 months. Every woman wanted the money, the status, the Instagram-worthy lifestyle. None of them wanted the man who still woke up screaming from nightmares about the car accident that had killed his parents when he was 16. Sir? Father Martinez appeared in the doorway. It's time. Gabriel's phone buzzed. A text from his sister. Still time to run. This is insane, even for you. But running wasn't an option. Not when he'd already announced the engagement to the press. Not when Lancaster Industries needed this alliance to survive the hostile takeover his competitors were planning. Not when he'd promised Elena Lancaster's father that he would protect her from a world that had spent 15 years treating her like a ghost. The organ music began. Wagner's Wedding March, echoing through the cathedral like a funeral dirge. Gabriel walked toward his fate, each step heavier than the last. The church was packed with 500 guests, all craning their necks to get a glimpse of the bride no one had seen since she was 13 years old. Their faces were hungry for spectacle, for tragedy, for the kind of story they could dissect at dinner parties for years to come. The Billionaire and the Beast, some tabloid had called it just yesterday. He reached the altar and turned. The church doors opened. Elena Lancaster appeared at the end of the aisle, draped in white silk and wearing a veil so thick it was like looking through fog. Her father, Charles Lancaster, walked beside her with the grim expression of a man leading his daughter to execution rather than marriage. Gabriel's heart hammered against his ribs. In 30 seconds, he would lift that veil. In 30 seconds, he would see the face that had launched 1,000 rejections. But as Elena moved closer, something unexpected happened. Her walk wasn't the shuffle of the ashamed or the hesitant steps of the reluctant. She glided toward him with the grace of a dancer, her head held high despite the veil that hid her features. When she was close enough that he could hear her breathing, she turned slightly, and he caught the faintest glimpse of her profile through the fabric. His blood turned to ice. That nose. That jawline. The way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right. It couldn't be. Father Martinez began speaking, but Gabriel heard nothing over the roar of his own pulse. His hands were shaking so violently he could barely hold the ring. Do you, Gabriel Chen, take Elena Lancaster to be your lawfully wedded wife? The words came from somewhere outside his body. I do. And do you, Elena Lancaster, take Gabriel Chen to be your lawfully wedded husband? Her voice was soft, musical, and struck him like lightning. I do. You may now kiss the bride. Gabriel's hands moved to her veil as if controlled by someone else. The congregation held its collective breath. Camera phones appeared despite the no photography rule. He lifted the veil. The world stopped. Staring back at him was the face that had haunted his dreams for 20 years. The face of the girl who had died in the car accident that killed his parents. The face of his 13-year-old childhood sweetheart, Ella Morrison, who had been pronounced dead at the scene. Elena Lancaster smiled at him with lips he had kissed when they were children, in eyes that should have been buried in Riverside Cemetery 2 decades ago. "Hello, Gabriel," she whispered. "Did you miss me?" Gabriel's knees buckled. Only his grip on Elena's hands kept him upright as the church erupted around them. Camera flashes exploded like gunfire. Guests rose from their seats, necks craning, voices rising in a crescendo of shock and speculation. But Gabriel heard none of it. He was 13 years old again, standing in the rain outside Riverside General Hospital, watching them wheel 3 body bags out of the morgue. His parents in 2 of them. And Ella Morrison, his first love, his best friend since kindergarten, in the 3rd. "You're dead," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "I watched them bury you." Elena's smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that looked almost like pity. "We need to talk. But not here." She squeezed his hands, and the touch was electric, familiar, impossible. "Trust me. Please." Father Martinez was calling for order, but it was useless. The wedding had become a circus. Gabriel's head of security, Martinez Rodriguez, appeared at his elbow. "Sir, we need to get you both out of here. Now." Gabriel nodded numbly. Elena slipped her arm through his, and together they walked back down the aisle that had become a gauntlet of staring faces and shouted questions. Gabriel caught fragments. Asterisk, how is this possible? Where has she been? What kind of game is this? Asterisk. David Kim materialized beside them as they reached the church doors. "Gabriel, what the hell is going on? The press is going insane. The Lancaster stock is already dropping. We need damage control, and we need it now." "Later," Gabriel managed. "Not later. Now. Do you have any idea what you've just done to our—" "I said later." Gabriel's voice cracked like a whip across the church steps. David stepped back, his face flushing. The limousine was waiting, engine running. Martinez held the door open, his expression professionally blank despite the chaos erupting around them. Gabriel helped Elena into the car, his hands still shaking. As soon as the door closed, the world went quiet except for the muffled roar of reporters outside. Gabriel stared at the woman sitting beside him. In the dim light of the limousine, she looked exactly as she had at 13, as if the past 20 years had touched everyone but her. The same dark hair that caught light like silk. The same green eyes that used to laugh at his terrible jokes. The same small scar above her left eyebrow from when she'd fallen off her bike, trying to impress him when they were 8. "You have questions," she said softly. "Questions?" Gabriel's laugh was harsh, broken. "I have about 1,000 questions. Starting with how you're alive and ending with why you just married me under a false name." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver locket. Gabriel's breath caught. He'd given it to her for her 13th birthday, 3 days before the accident. Inside was a picture of them at the school dance, his arm around her waist, both of them grinning like they owned the world. "I never stopped wearing it," she said, fastening it around her neck. "Even when they told me you were dead too." "What?" Gabriel felt the world tilt. "What are you talking about? I wasn't in the car. I was at soccer practice." "That's not what they told me." Elena's voice was steady, but her hands were trembling. "When I woke up in the hospital 6 months later, they said everyone had died. My parents. Your parents. You. They said I was the only survivor, and that I was being placed in protective custody for my own safety." Gabriel's mind reeled. Protective custody? From what? From whoever caused the accident. Elena turned to face him fully, and in her eyes, he saw 20 years of grief and rage. "Gabriel, that wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill us. And they're still out there." The limousine pulled up to Gabriel's private estate outside the city. As they passed through the security gates, Elena pressed her face to the window. "I used to dream about this place," she said quietly. "Remember? We used to plan our wedding here. Under the oak tree by the lake." Gabriel remembered. Of course he remembered. They'd been children playing dress-up, but even then, he'd known he wanted to spend his life with Ella Morrison. After the accident, he'd bought this property specifically because it reminded him of their childhood games. Now she was here, alive, married to him, and nothing made sense. The car stopped in front of the main house. As they climbed the steps to the front door, Elena suddenly grabbed his arm. "Gabriel, there's something else you need to know before we go inside." He turned to her, his heart already bracing for another impossibility. "I didn't come back just for you," she said, and her voice carried a weight that made his stomach drop. "I came back for revenge. And the people who tried to kill us? They're in your inner circle." Before Gabriel could respond, the front door opened. David Kim stood in the doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw them, he ended the call quickly. Too quickly. Gabriel, thank God you're here. We have a situation. The press is calling this the wedding of the century, but the board is panicking. Charles Lancaster has been trying to reach you. He says there's something you need to know about Elena's condition. Elena's grip tightened on Gabriel's arm. What condition? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. David's eyes flicked between them, and Gabriel caught something in his expression. Something that looked like guilt. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Elena stepped forward, and suddenly she was no longer the shy, hidden bride from the church. She was someone else entirely. Someone harder. Tell me what condition he's referring to. David's face went pale. The scarring. From the accident. Charles said you've been receiving treatment, but that your face. He trailed off, clearly realizing he'd made a mistake. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Scarring? Is that what he told you? She turned to Gabriel, and the look in her eyes made his blood run cold. Did you marry me because you thought I was damaged? Because you felt sorry for the poor, disfigured girl no one else would have? Elena, no, My name isn't Elena Lancaster, she said, her voice cutting through his protests like a blade. It never was. Charles Lancaster isn't my father. He's the man who's been keeping me prisoner for 20 years, telling the world I was too hideous to be seen, while he used my supposed death to steal my family's company. Gabriel felt the ground shifting beneath his feet again. What company? Morrison Industries, Elena said, and now Gabriel understood why David had gone white as a sheet. The company you've spent the last 10 years systematically destroying. The company you bankrupted 6 months ago, putting 2,000 people out of work. Her eyes were blazing now, beautiful and terrible. The company that belonged to my parents. The company you helped Charles Lancaster steal. David dropped his phone. The sound of it shattering on the marble floor was the only noise in the suddenly deadly quiet foyer. Ella, Gabriel whispered, the pieces finally clicking into place. What have you done? She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had spent 20 years planning this moment. I married you, Gabriel, just like we always planned. And now, thanks to community property laws, I own half of everything you've built on the bones of my family's company. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same jasmine scent she'd worn when they were children. Did you really think I came back from the dead just to live happily ever after? Behind them, David was frantically dialing another number. Charles, we have a problem. She knows. She knows everything. Elena's smile widened. Oh, David, you should really be more careful about who you trust. She pulled a small recording device from her purse and pressed play. David's voice filled the foyer. Asterisk, the girl doesn't know anything. Gabriel thinks he's doing charity work. By the time she figures out he helped destroy her family, it'll be too late. The merger will be complete, and Morrison Industries will be buried forever. Asterisk. Gabriel stared at his best friend, his business partner, the man he'd trusted with his life for 15 years. David's face crumpled. Gabriel, I can explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Charles said she was dead. We all thought she was dead. But I'm not dead, Elena said softly. And neither is my desire for justice. She turned to Gabriel one last time, and for a moment, he saw a flicker of the girl he'd loved. I'm sorry, Gabriel. I wish it could have been different. I wish you hadn't chosen them over me. Chosen them? Ella, I thought you were dead. I've spent 20 years mourning you. Have you? Her voice was barely a whisper. Then why did you help them destroy everything my parents built? Why did you stand by while Charles Lancaster erased every trace of my family from the world? Gabriel opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. Because deep down, in a place he'd never wanted to examine too closely, he knew she was right. He'd known Morrison Industries was struggling when he'd started targeting their contracts. He'd known the company had been founded by James and Sarah Morrison. He'd just never made the connection to his Ella, his lost love who'd died too young. Elena walked toward the door, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost. By tomorrow morning, Gabriel, half your assets will be frozen. By next week, I'll have enough evidence to send David and Charles to prison for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. And by next month, I'll have rebuilt Morrison Industries from the ashes you and your friends created. She paused at the threshold and looked back. Oh, and Gabriel? Check your prenup. You'll find that Elena Lancaster signed it. But Elena Lancaster doesn't exist. I'm Ella Morrison, and I never signed anything. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Gabriel Chun, billionaire, empire builder, master of his universe, sank onto the marble steps of his foyer and put his head in his hands. Outside, he could hear the sound of car engines starting, reporters shouting questions, his carefully constructed life beginning to crumble. David was still standing there, phone in hand, looking like a man watching his own execution. "Gabriel, we can fix this." "We can." "Get out," Gabriel said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Get out before I do something that will make the next 20 years very unpleasant for you." David hesitated, then nodded. He walked toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I never wanted her to get hurt. In the beginning, Charles just wanted to keep her safe until... Until what?" Gabriel's voice was deadly quiet. "Until the statute of limitations ran out on what we did." Gabriel sat alone in his study for exactly 17 minutes before his phone exploded. The first call was from his lawyer. "Gabriel, what the hell happened at that wedding? The news is calling it the revenge plot of the century. Every major network is running your story. And I just got a call from Elena Lancaster's attorney, except they're saying her real name is Ella Morrison. They're filing for immediate asset seizure under." Gabriel hung up. The second call was from his sister Amy. "Oh my God, Gabriel, I'm watching the news. They're saying you married a dead girl? They're saying she's going to destroy you. Gabriel, please tell me this isn't happening." He hung up on her too. The third call was from Charles Lancaster, and Gabriel almost didn't answer. But something in him needed to hear the man's voice, needed to understand how deep this betrayal went. "You son of a bitch." Charles's voice was raw with panic. "She was supposed to stay hidden. You were supposed to marry her quietly, secure the merger, and keep her under control. How did you let this happen?" "Let what happen?" Gabriel's voice was dangerously quiet. "Let me find out that my business partner and my new father-in-law have been lying to me for 15 years? Let me discover that the woman I thought was dead has been your prisoner." "Prisoner?" Charles laughed bitterly. "Is that what she told you? Gabriel, that girl is dangerous. She always was. Even as a child, she was obsessed with revenge, with getting back at anyone who crossed her. Why do you think her own parents were trying to send her away when... When what, Charles?" Silence. "When what?" Gabriel repeated, his heart hammering. "When the accident happened," Charles finished weakly. Gabriel closed his eyes. "It wasn't an accident." "Gabriel, you don't understand the whole story." "Then tell me the whole story. Right now. Or I'll make sure Ella gets everything she wants and more." Charles was quiet for so long Gabriel thought he'd hung up. Then, "Your father found out about the Morrison account irregularities. He was going to expose everything. The money that had been moved, the contracts that had been falsified, the way we'd been systematically bleeding Morrison Industries dry for years." Gabriel's blood turned to ice. "My father knew? He confronted me the night before the accident. Said he was going to the authorities the next morning, unless I made full restitution. James Morrison was his closest friend. They'd built their companies together. Your father couldn't stand the betrayal. The world was spinning." Gabriel gripped the edge of his desk. "So you killed him?" "No." Charles's voice cracked. "No, Gabriel, I never meant for anyone to die. I tampered with James Morrison's car. I thought if he had an accident, was injured, we could buy more time. I never knew Ella would be in the car. I never knew your parents would follow them to the hospital." Gabriel couldn't breathe. "They followed them because my father was worried about his best friend. Because he cared about the Morrison family. The brakes failed on both cars. It was supposed to be just a fender bender, just enough to delay James from going to the police. But something went wrong. The cars went over the bridge into the river, and..." Charles's voice broke. "I thought everyone was dead. For 20 years, I thought everyone was dead. But Ella survived. Barely. She was in a coma for 6 months. When she woke up, she had amnesia. Couldn't remember anything from before the accident. I told the doctors I was her uncle, that her parents had named me as her guardian. It was easy to fake the paperwork. Everyone who could contradict me was dead." Gabriel felt sick. "So you kept her." "I gave her a good life. I raised her as my own daughter. I gave her the best education, the best medical care. I protected her. You stole her identity. You stole her inheritance. You made her believe everyone she loved was dead while you got rich off her family's company. I gave her everything she could ever want. Except the truth." Gabriel's voice was flat. "When did her memory come back?" Another long pause. 3 years ago. She hired a private investigator to look into her past. Started asking questions about why she had no birth certificate, no childhood photos, no medical records before the age of 13. 3 years. Ella had known the truth for 3 years and had spent that time planning this moment. Gabriel felt a grudging admiration for her patience, her calculation. Gabriel, you have to understand, Charles continued. When she found out, she became different. Dangerous. She started threatening to expose everything. I had to keep her under control. How? I told her you were part of it. That you'd helped me destroy Morrison Industries because you wanted revenge on the girl who'd broken your heart when you were children. Gabriel's hand tightened on the phone. That's a lie. Is it? Charles's voice turned sly. You did target Morrison Industries, specifically Gabriel. You did take their biggest contracts. You did drive them into bankruptcy. When I suggested those business moves, you never questioned why. Maybe part of you wanted to hurt the Morrisons for taking your Ella away from you. The accusation hit like a physical blow because there was a grain of truth in it. Gabriel had been ruthless in his business dealings with Morrison Industries. When David had suggested they were vulnerable, Gabriel had gone after them with everything he had. He'd told himself it was just business, but now... She hates you, Gabriel, Charles continued. She spent 3 years planning your destruction. Do you really think she married you for love? She married you to destroy you. And she will. Unless we stop her. We. Gabriel's voice was deadly quiet. She's going to expose everything. The accident, the conspiracy, the money laundering. She has evidence that will put me in prison for life. But it will destroy you too. Your company, your reputation, your future. We can't let that happen. What are you suggesting? She had an accident once before, Gabriel. Accidents can happen again. The line went dead. Gabriel stared at his phone, Charles's words echoing in his mind. The man who had raised Ella for 20 years was now suggesting they kill her. Again. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. * rooftop garden. Midnight. Come alone. E*. Gabriel looked at the clock. 11:30 p.m. He had 30 minutes to decide who he was going to be. The man who protected his empire at any cost, or the boy who had once promised Ella Morrison he would love her forever. He was still staring at the message when Martinez appeared in his doorway. Sir, there's a problem. 3 men just tried to scale the back wall. Security footage shows them carrying what looked like medical equipment. Gabriel's blood ran cold. Where are they now? We apprehended 2. The 3rd got away. But sir, they had these. Martinez held up a syringe and a vial of clear liquid. Our chemical analyst says it's a powerful sedative. Enough to knock someone unconscious for hours. Gabriel was already moving toward the door. Call the police. Tell them Charles Lancaster just threatened to murder his daughter. Then lock down the property. No one gets in or out except me. Sir, where are you going? Gabriel was already running toward the stairs that led to the rooftop garden. To save my wife. The garden was dark except for the moonlight filtering through the glass dome overhead. Gabriel emerged from the stairwell to find Ella standing at the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city lights. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into jeans and a dark sweater, and somehow that made her look more like the girl he remembered. You came, she said without turning around. Your father just tried to have you kidnapped, Gabriel said, walking slowly toward her. Maybe killed. He's not my father. Ella's voice was steady, but Gabriel could see her hands shaking. And yes, I know. I've been expecting it for months. Charles doesn't like loose ends. Ella, we need to get you somewhere safe. Safe? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Gabriel, I haven't been safe since I was 13 years old. The only thing that's kept me alive this long is making myself too valuable to kill. But now that the truth is out, she shrugged. Charles has nothing left to lose. Gabriel stopped a few feet away from her. Then we'll stop him. Together. Together? She finally turned to face him, and in the moonlight, she looked exactly like she had at 13, beautiful, fierce, and utterly heartbroken. Gabriel, I destroyed your life tonight. I humiliated you in front of 500 people. I'm about to freeze your assets and drag your name through every court in the country. Why would you want to help me? Because I love you, Gabriel said simply. I've loved you since we were 8 years old, and I never stopped. Not when I thought you were dead, not when I found out you were alive, and not even when I learned you hate me. Ella's composure cracked. I don't hate you. Then why? Because you chose them. The words erupted from her like they'd been building pressure for years. When I found out what Charles had done, I spent months gathering evidence. I could have exposed everything 3 years ago. But first, I wanted to know if you were part of it. I wanted to know if the boy I loved had grown up to be the kind of man who would help destroy innocent people for money. Gabriel felt like she'd slapped him. And what did you find? I found that you targeted Morrison Industries specifically. I found that you took meetings with Charles Lancaster every month for 5 years leading up to our bankruptcy. I found that you personally signed off on every contract that was stolen from us. Tears were running down her face now. I found that when David suggested we were vulnerable, you went after us like we were your enemies instead of the family of the girl you claimed to love. Gabriel wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Because it was true. All of it. I didn't know, he said weakly. You didn't want to know, Ella shot back. It was easier to believe we were just another company to be conquered. It was easier to think I was dead than to wonder why the Morrison family was being systematically destroyed by the people I loved. They stared at each other across the space between them, 20 years of grief and anger and love crackling in the air. You're right, Gabriel said finally. I was a coward. I was so afraid of being hurt again that I turned myself into someone who couldn't be hurt. Someone who didn't ask questions about where the money came from or who got destroyed along the way. He took a step toward her. But Ella, I swear to you, if I had known you were alive, if I had known what Charles was doing to you, I would have burned my own empire to the ground to save you. Would you? She asked quietly. Would you really? Gabriel reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. With Ella watching, he dialed his lawyer's number. Gabriel, thank God. The man answered immediately. I've been trying to reach you. We can fight this. We can prove she manipulated you, that the marriage isn't legal. Stop, Gabriel said. I want you to call Elena's attorneys first thing in the morning. Tell them I'm not contesting the asset seizure. Tell them I'm turning over all documentation related to the Morrison Industries acquisition. Tell them I want to cooperate fully with any investigation into Charles Lancaster. Gabriel, are you insane? You'll lose everything. Then I'll lose everything. Gabriel never took his eyes off Ella's face. And one more thing. Transfer ownership of the Morrison industrial patents back to Elena Morrison. All of them. Tonight. He hung up. Ella was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. Gabriel, those patents are worth everything, he finished. They're worth everything I stole from you. Everything I should have protected instead of destroying. A sound echoed across the rooftop. Footsteps on the stairwell below. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving fast. Ella's face went white. Charles's men. They found us. Gabriel stepped in front of her, his body blocking hers from the stairwell entrance. How many exits are there from this roof? Just the one. Ella's voice was tight with fear. Gabriel, you need to go. They're not here for you. I'm not leaving you. Gabriel. I'm not leaving you. He turned to face her fully, his hands framing her face. Ella, I lost you once because I wasn't brave enough to fight for what mattered. I won't make that mistake again. The footsteps were getting closer. There's another way, Ella said suddenly. The maintenance ladder on the south side. It leads down to the security office. If we can reach Martinez. Go, Gabriel said. I'll buy you time. Not without you. Gabriel kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of 20 years of regret. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. Together, he asked. Together, she agreed. They ran. The maintenance ladder was a death trap. Gabriel looked down at the 30-foot drop to the concrete below, then at Ella's face in the moonlight. She was trying to hide her terror, but he could see it in the way her hands gripped the railing. I can't, she whispered. Gabriel, I can't do heights. Not since the bridge. The footsteps behind them were getting closer. Voices now low and urgent. Gabriel counted at least 3 men, maybe 4. Look at me, Gabriel said, taking her face in his hands. Don't look down. Just look at me. We're going to do this together, one rung at a time. Gabriel Chun. Charles Lancaster's voice echoed across the rooftop. I know you're up here. We just want the girl. You can walk away from this. Gabriel's jaw clenched. He helped Ella over the railing, then swung his legs over to join her on the ladder. Stay close to the wall, he murmured. Don't look anywhere but at my face. They started down, Ella above him so he could catch her if she fell. Her breathing was sharp and panicked, but she kept moving. 10 feet. 15. 20. Gabriel's phone buzzed against his chest. A text. Without stopping, he glanced at it. Asterisk Martinez compromised. Don't trust security. Amy asterisk. His blood turned to ice. If Martinez was working with Charles, then they were climbing down toward their enemies, not their salvation. Ella, he whispered. We need to stop. But it was too late. Floodlights exploded around them, turning night into harsh, blinding day. Gabriel squinted through the glare and saw 4 men in black tactical gear surrounding the base of the ladder. Martinez stood among them, his weapon drawn. Sorry, sir, Martinez called up. Nothing personal. But Mr. Lancaster pays better than you do. Gabriel looked up. Charles's men were starting down the ladder from above. They were trapped. The window, Ella said suddenly. 3rd floor. My old studio. Gabriel followed her gaze and saw a narrow ledge leading to a darkened window about 6 feet to their left. It was barely wide enough for one person, and one wrong step would mean a 3-story fall. Ella, that's insane. It's our only chance. She was already moving, stepping sideways onto the ledge with the fluid grace of someone who had clearly done this before. I used to sneak out this way when Charles thought I was sleeping. Gabriel followed her, his heart hammering. The ledge was slick with condensation, and the wind at this height made every step treacherous. Below them, Martinez was shouting orders. Above them, the men on the ladder were closing in. Ella reached the window and pulled something from her pocket, a key. I always kept a way out, she said, unlocking the window and pushing it open. Charles never knew. They tumbled through the window into darkness. Gabriel slammed it shut behind them and locked it just as the first tactical flashlight beam swept across the glass. This way, Ella whispered, grabbing his hand. They were in what had once been an art studio. Gabriel could make out easels, canvases, the ghostly shapes of furniture covered in sheets. The air smelled of old paint and abandonment. You lived here? Gabriel asked as they moved through the room. For 20 years. Ella's voice was bitter. Charles told everyone I was too damaged to be seen, but the truth was he needed to keep me isolated. Controlled. This was my prison. She led him to what looked like a blank wall, then pressed something hidden in the molding. A section of the wall swung open, revealing a narrow passage. Secret passages? Gabriel would have smiled if they weren't running for their lives. Charles wasn't the only one who could keep secrets. Ella's eyes glinted in the darkness. I spent years mapping this house, finding every weakness, every way out. I knew this day would come. The passage was barely wide enough for them to walk single file. It curved downward, following the bones of the house. Gabriel could hear their pursuers in the room behind them, searching, calling out coordinates. Where does this lead? Gabriel whispered. The wine cellar. There's a tunnel that connects to the old servants' quarters. From there, we can reach the garage. They moved in tense silence, their hands linked, their bodies pressed close in the narrow space. Gabriel was acutely aware of Ella's warmth, her scent, the way she moved with quiet confidence through the darkness. This was her world, her carefully planned escape route. She had been preparing for this moment for years. Ella, he said quietly, when you found out I was part of destroying your family's company, why didn't you just expose everything then? Why wait? Why marry me? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, because I needed to be sure. Sure of what? Sure that you were really lost to me. Sure that the boy I loved was gone forever. Her voice cracked slightly. I kept hoping I was wrong, that there was some explanation, that you were being used the same way I was. Gabriel's chest tightened. And now I don't know what to think. She stopped walking and turned to face him in the darkness. When you transferred those patents back to me tonight, Gabriel, do you understand what you just did? You gave up everything. Your entire empire was built on those technologies. I gave back what was never mine to begin with. Most people wouldn't see it that way. Ella's hand found his face in the darkness, her fingers tracing his cheek. Most people would have fought, would have tried to destroy me before I could destroy them. I'm not most people. No, she said softly. You're not. You're still him, aren't you? You're still the boy who gave me his lunch money when Sarah Hendricks stole mine. Still the boy who punched Tommy Richards for calling me ugly. Still the boy who promised to love me forever. Gabriel caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. I never stopped being that boy, Ella. I just forgot for a while. She leaned into him then, and for a moment they were 13 again, hiding in their secret fort in the woods, planning their future together. Gabriel could almost forget they were fugitives in a house that wanted them dead. Almost. The sound of voices reached them through the passage walls. Close. Too close. They found the entrance, Ella whispered. They ran. The passage opened into the wine cellar, a cavernous room lined with dusty bottles that probably cost more than most people's cars. Ella led him to the far corner, where another hidden door opened onto a tunnel that smelled of earth and age. "This leads to the servants' quarters," she explained as they hurried through the tunnel. "Charles had it sealed off years ago, but I reopened it. The garages." She stopped abruptly. Gabriel nearly ran into her. "What is it?" "Listen." Gabriel strained his ears and heard it, footsteps. Coming from ahead of them. They were being herded. "It's a trap," Ella whispered. Charles knew about this tunnel. Gabriel's mind raced. If Martinez had been compromised, if Charles knew about Ella's escape routes, then this whole thing had been orchestrated. They weren't running toward safety. They were running exactly where Charles wanted them to go. "How long have you been planning this escape?" Gabriel asked suddenly. 3 years. "Why? And in 3 years you never used it? Never tested it?" Ella's face went white. "Oh God. He's been watching me. All this time he's been watching, learning my plans." The footsteps were getting closer from both directions now. They were trapped in the tunnel with nowhere to go. "There," Gabriel said, pointing up. Above them, barely visible in the darkness, was what looked like a maintenance shaft. "Can you reach it?" Gabriel boosted Ella up, his hands on her waist as she stretched toward the opening. Her fingers found the edge, and she pulled herself up with surprising strength. Then she reached down for him. "Gabriel, hurry." He jumped, caught her hands, and let her pull him up into the shaft just as flashlight beams swept through the tunnel below. They were in the building's ventilation system now, crawling through metal ducts that groaned under their weight. Every sound seemed amplified, every movement a potential betrayal of their location. "Where does this lead?" Gabriel whispered. "I don't know," Ella admitted. "I never mapped the ventilation system." They crawled in what Gabriel hoped was the direction of the outer wall, guided only by the faint movement of air that suggested an exit. Behind them, they could hear their pursuers entering the shaft. "There," Ella said suddenly. "Light." Ahead of them, a shaft of moonlight cut through the darkness. A grate leading outside. Gabriel crawled past Ella and examined it. The screws were old, rusted. He worked at them with his keys, his hands slipping with sweat and desperation. The first screw came loose. The second. The voices behind them were getting closer. "Gabriel," Ella whispered urgently. "Almost got it." The third screw. The fourth. The grate swung open and cool night air rushed in. They were on the side of the house, about 15 feet up. Below them was a garden bed, soft earth and decorative shrubs that might break their fall. "Together?" Gabriel asked. "Together." They jumped. Gabriel hit the ground hard, pain shooting through his shoulder as he rolled. Beside him, Ella gasped as she landed, but she was already moving, already pulling him to his feet. "The garage," she said. "This way." They ran across the lawn, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the security lights that swept the grounds in regular patterns. Gabriel's shoulder was on fire, but he ignored it. They were so close. The garage was a separate building, connected to the main house by a covered walkway. Ella led him to a side door, producing another key from her seemingly endless supply. "How many keys do you have?" Gabriel asked as she unlocked the door. "Enough." She smiled grimly. "I told you, I've been planning this for years." Inside the garage were 6 cars, ranging from practical sedans to exotic sports cars worth more than most people's houses. Ella went straight to a motorcycle in the corner, a sleek black machine that looked built for speed. "You still ride?" Gabriel asked, remembering how she'd been the only girl in their school brave enough to ride dirt bikes with the boys. "Every chance I get." Ella threw him a helmet and started the engine. The motorcycle roared to life, its sound echoing through the garage. "Get on." Gabriel climbed on behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. The feeling was intoxicating. Her body pressed against his, the vibration of the powerful engine, the smell of her hair mixing with leather and gasoline. "Hold tight," she said, and hit the garage door opener. The door began to rise, revealing the driveway beyond. And standing in that driveway, blocking their escape, was Charles Lancaster with a dozen armed men. "Hello, Elena," Charles called out, his voice carrying easily over the motorcycle's engine. "Or should I say Ella? I think it's time we had a family reunion." Ella's hands tightened on the handlebars. Gabriel could feel the tension in her body, the way she was calculating angles, distances, possibilities. "There are too many of them," Gabriel murmured in her ear. "I know." Ella's voice was steady, but Gabriel could hear the desperation underneath. "Gabriel, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you earlier." "What?" "I'm not just here for revenge." She turned slightly, so he could see her profile. I'm here because Charles has my daughter. Gabriel's world tilted. You're what? My daughter, Sophie. She's 6 years old. Ella's voice cracked. Charles has been using her to control me for 3 years. He said if I ever tried to escape, if I ever exposed him, he would hurt her. Gabriel felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Ella had a daughter. A 6-year-old daughter who was being held hostage. Where is she? He asked. I don't know. Charles moves her every few months. That's why I couldn't just run. That's why I had to do this the hard way. Had to make sure I could bring him down completely before I made my move. Everything clicked into place. The careful planning, the 3 years of preparation, the marriage that put her in a position to destroy Charles legally rather than just exposing him. She hadn't been planning revenge, she'd been planning a rescue. Gabriel, she continued, when I found out you weren't part of the conspiracy, when I realized you were just another one of Charles's victims, I thought maybe we could work together. Maybe you could help me find her. Ella Morrison. Charles's voice cut through her words. You have 10 seconds to turn off that engine and step away from the vehicle. If you don't, I'll make a phone call and your daughter will pay the price. Ella's hand moved toward the kill switch. No, Gabriel said quietly. Don't give up. Not when we're this close. Gabriel, he'll hurt her. He'll hurt her anyway. You know that. Gabriel's arms tightened around her waist. Ella, trust me. One more time. Trust me like you did when we were kids. She looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw the same desperate hope that had always made him want to be better than he was. What do you need me to do? She asked. Gabriel smiled, and for the first time in hours it was genuine. Rev the engine. Rev the engine, Gabriel repeated. Ella's hand twisted the throttle, and the motorcycle's roar filled the garage. Charles's men raised their weapons, but Charles held up a hand to stop them. Last chance, Elena, Charles called out. Think about Sophie. Gabriel leaned close to Ella's ear. When I say go, gun it straight at the gap between the third and fourth man from the left. Don't stop, no matter what happens. Gabriel, what are you? Go. Ella released the clutch and the motorcycle shot forward like a bullet. Gabriel threw himself sideways off the bike just as they cleared the garage, rolling hard across the concrete driveway. Gunshots erupted around him, but the men were confused, some tracking the motorcycle with Ella on it, others turning toward Gabriel. In the chaos, Gabriel sprinted toward the one person who might have answers. Charles Lancaster himself. He tackled the older man, and they went down hard. Charles's phone skittered across the pavement, its screen showing a video call in progress. Gabriel glimpsed a small room, a child's toys, and then the phone went dark. Where is she? Gabriel snarled, pinning Charles to the ground. Where's Sophie? Charles smiled, blood running from his split lip. You really don't know, do you? After all these years, you still don't understand what's really happening here. Tell me. Gabriel. Ella's voice cut through the night. She'd stopped the motorcycle 50 yards away and was looking back at him. Gabriel, get out of there. But Gabriel couldn't move. Charles was laughing now, a sound like glass breaking. She never told you, Charles wheezed. She never told you the truth about Sophie. What truth? Sophie Morrison, Charles said, and Gabriel's world collapsed. Born 7 years ago. Father unknown, according to the birth certificate. But we both know that's a lie, don't we, Gabriel? Gabriel's hands went slack. That's impossible. Ella was supposed to be dead. We never. Never what? Never spent 3 days together when you were 18? Never snuck away to that little cabin by the lake during your winter break from college? Charles's eyes glittered with malicious joy. I have pictures, Gabriel. I have hotel receipts. I have the pregnancy test Elena took 2 weeks after you left for Stanford. The world was spinning. Gabriel tried to remember that winter break when he was 18. He'd been grieving, drinking too much, desperate to feel something other than the constant ache of missing Ella. There had been a girl at a party, someone who looked like Ella in the dark, someone who whispered Ella's name when they kissed. No, Gabriel whispered. No, that was someone else. A girl named Emma. She said her name was Emma. Elena Morrison, calling herself Emma Morris, Charles said softly. She found you, Gabriel. She tracked you down at college because she was pregnant and scared and alone. But you were too drunk to recognize her. Too lost in your own grief to see that your Ella was right there, reaching out to you. Gabriel felt like he was drowning. She would have told me. If she knew who I was, she would have told me. Would she? You spent 3 days with her, and you never once looked at her face in good light. You kept the room dark. You kept calling her by another girl's name. And when she tried to tell you who she really was, you told her to stop lying, that the real Ella was dead. The memories were coming back now, jagged and painful. That winter break. The girl who had felt so familiar, so right. The way she had tried to talk to him about his past, about his grief. The way he had shut her down, too afraid to hope, too broken to believe. I left her, Gabriel whispered. I left her pregnant and alone. And Charles found her, a new voice said from behind them. Gabriel spun around to see his sister Amy walking toward them, her phone in her hand. She looked calm, composed, like she was arriving at a business meeting instead of a hostage situation. Amy. Gabriel stared at his sister. What are you doing here? Cleaning up a mess that's been 20 years in the making, Amy said. She gestured to Charles's men, who were lowering their weapons. You can let him up now, Gabriel. The game's over. Gabriel slowly released Charles, who sat up with a grunt of pain. Amy, I don't understand. How did I know where you were? How did I know about the secret passages? How did I know about Ella's escape routes? Amy smiled, but it was cold, calculating. I've been working with Charles for 15 years, Gabriel. Who do you think has been feeding him information about your business deals? Who do you think suggested that you target Morrison Industries in the first place? Gabriel felt like he'd been hit by lightning. You. Me. Amy tucked her phone into her pocket. Did you really think it was a coincidence that David Kim introduced you to Charles Lancaster? Did you think it was luck that every business decision you made happened to benefit Charles's companies? But why? Gabriel's voice was barely a whisper. Because you were going to throw everything away. Amy's composure cracked, revealing the rage underneath. You spent years building an empire, and for what? So you could give it all away to a dead girl's memory? So you could turn down every profitable deal because it reminded you of some childhood sweetheart who died in a car crash. Gabriel staggered backward. You've been manipulating me for 15 years. I've been saving you from yourself. Amy stepped closer, her eyes blazing. Do you know how many times you almost discovered the truth? How many times you got close to figuring out that Ella was alive? I had to work constantly to keep you distracted, keep you focused on building your empire instead of dwelling on the past. Where's Sophie? Gabriel's voice was raw with desperation. Amy and Charles exchanged glances. Then Amy pulled out her phone and showed Gabriel the screen. It was a video call showing a little girl with dark hair and familiar green eyes, playing with toys in what looked like a hotel room. Sophie's fine, Amy said. She's been fine all along. She's at a resort in Switzerland with her nanny, thinking she's on a fun vacation while mommy handles some business. She has no idea she's been used as leverage. Gabriel stared at the screen, at the face that was unmistakably a blend of his features and Ella's. His daughter. He had a daughter, and he'd never known. She looks like you, Charles said softly. Same stubborn chin. Same way of concentrating when she's playing. Elena used to spend hours just watching home videos of Sophie, trying to see you in her face. I want to talk to her, Gabriel said. Oh, you will, Amy replied. After we sort out this mess. After Ella signs over all rights to Morrison Industries and agrees to disappear again. After you stop this ridiculous crusade and get back to making money. And if we don't agree? Amy's expression hardened. Then Sophie stops being on vacation and starts being an orphan. A motorcycle engine roared in the distance. Gabriel looked up to see Ella racing back toward them, her face set in determination. She's coming back, Charles observed. I told you she wouldn't abandon you, Gabriel. Love makes people stupid. Ella skidded to a stop 20 feet away and pulled off her helmet. Let me see her, she called out. Let me see Sophie, and then we'll talk. Amy held up her phone, angling it so Ella could see the video call. She's beautiful, isn't she? She has your eyes. And Gabriel's smile. Ella's face crumpled. Sophie, baby, can you hear Mommy? The little girl on the screen looked up and waved. Mommy, are you coming to get me soon? Sarah says we're going to see the mountains tomorrow, but I want to go home. Soon, sweetheart, Ella said, tears streaming down her face. Mommy's going to come get you very soon. Amy ended the call. Touching. Now let's discuss terms. What terms? Gabriel asked. Simple. Ella signs a document transferring all Morrison assets to Charles permanently. She also signs a document relinquishing all parental rights to Sophie, who will be raised by a lovely family in Switzerland who think they're adopting an orphan. In exchange, everyone walks away from this alive. And if we refuse? Then Charles calls his contacts in Switzerland, and Sophie has a very unfortunate accident. Skiing can be so dangerous for children. Gabriel felt rage building in his chest, white-hot and consuming. You're talking about murdering a 6-year-old girl. I'm talking about protecting a multi-billion-dollar empire, Amy shot back. Do you know how many people depend on our companies for their livelihoods? How many families would be destroyed if this all came out? How many investors would lose everything? Sophie is one child. We're talking about thousands of lives. She's my child, Gabriel roared. A child you never knew existed until tonight. Amy's mask slipped completely now, revealing years of resentment and fury. A child you abandoned when you walked away from her mother. You don't get to play father now, Gabriel. You gave up that right when you left Ella pregnant and alone. Gabriel looked at Ella, who was staring at him with a mixture of love and devastation in her eyes. You knew, he said quietly. All this time, you knew Sophie was mine. I've known since the day she was born, Ella whispered. She opened her eyes, and I saw you looking back at me. Why didn't you tell me? When you came back, when you married me, why didn't you tell me I had a daughter? Ella's voice broke. Because I was afraid you'd want to take her away from me. I was afraid you'd fight for custody, and I'd lose the only thing that kept me alive for 7 years. Gabriel felt something dying inside his chest. You thought I would hurt you. I thought you would choose your empire over us. Just like you did 20 years ago when you chose to forget me rather than deal with the pain. They stared at each other across the space between them, surrounded by armed men and the ruins of their shared past. Gabriel realized that Amy was right about one thing. Love did make people stupid. But maybe stupidity was better than the cold calculation that had ruled his life for 20 years. There's another option, Gabriel said suddenly. What? Charles asked. Gabriel turned to face his sister, the woman who had shaped his entire adult life through lies and manipulation. Amy walks away now, takes half of everything she wants, and disappears. Charles releases Sophie and turns himself into the authorities. And Ella and I take Sophie and start over somewhere far away from all of this. Amy laughed. And why would we agree to that? Gabriel smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression he'd worn all night. Because 30 minutes ago, I sent copies of every document in my personal safe to 3 different newspapers, along with audio recordings of Charles threatening to murder Sophie. The story goes live at midnight unless I send a cancellation code every hour. Amy's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Gabriel pulled out his phone. It's 11:47. Do you want to find out? Charles struggled to his feet. You're destroying yourself too. Your name is on half those documents. I know. Gabriel looked at Ella, at the woman he'd loved and lost and found again. But I'm not my empire, Charles. I'm not my money or my reputation or my business deals. I'm the man who loves Ella Morrison and wants to be a father to his daughter. Everything else can burn. Amy raised her gun. I won't let you destroy everything we've built. Amy, don't, Gabriel said softly. Please. You're my sister. You're the only family I have left. Family? Amy's voice was bitter. Gabriel, you stopped being my family the day you decided a dead girl mattered more than your living sister. Do you know what it was like? Watching you mourn someone else while I was right there, trying to help you build something meaningful? Watching you throw away opportunity after opportunity because you couldn't let go of a childhood crush. I'm sorry, Gabriel said, and he meant it. I'm sorry I wasn't the brother you needed. I'm sorry I was so lost in my own grief that I couldn't see yours. But Amy, this isn't the answer. This isn't who you really are. For a moment, Amy's mask slipped, and Gabriel saw the scared, angry girl who had watched her parents die and then watched her only remaining family disappear into his own pain. It's too late, she whispered. I've gone too far to turn back now. It's never too late, Ella said suddenly. She stepped forward, her hands raised. Amy, I understand what it's like to lose everything. I understand what it's like to watch the people you love choose their pain over your love. But Gabriel's right. This isn't who you are. This is who your grief made you. Don't, Amy warned, but there were tears in her eyes now. You could have killed us tonight, Ella continued. You could have let Charles's men shoot us down in that garage. But you didn't. Because you're not a killer, Amy. You're just a woman who's been in pain for 20 years and doesn't know how to stop. Amy's gun wavered. Gabriel took a step toward his sister. Let me help you, he said. Let me be the brother I should have been 20 years ago. Let us start over. Amy looked at him, at Ella, at the phone in Gabriel's hand showing 11:49. Then she looked at Charles, who was watching the exchange with growing panic. If I walk away, Amy said slowly, what happens to me? You disappear, Gabriel said. New identity, new life, enough money to start over anywhere in the world. And Sophie gets to grow up knowing she has an aunt who loved her father enough to protect him, even when he didn't deserve it. Amy was quiet for a long moment. Then she lowered her gun. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Gabriel, I'm so sorry. I just wanted you to be happy." Gabriel stepped forward and pulled his sister into his arms. I know you did. And I forgive you." Amy sobbed against his shoulder, 20 years of resentment and love and regret pouring out of her. Over her head, Gabriel met Ella's eyes. They had 2 minutes until midnight. Charles Lancaster raised his own gun. "How touching. But I'm afraid family reunions don't change the fact that I'll go to prison for the rest of my life if this gets out." He aimed at Gabriel's head. The gunshot was deafening in the quiet night. But it wasn't Charles who fired. Amy still had her finger on the trigger as Charles Lancaster collapsed, a spreading red stain on his chest. His own gun clattered across the pavement. "Nobody hurts my brother," Amy said quietly. "Nobody." Charles's men looked at each other, then at their fallen leader, then at the siblings holding each other in the driveway. One by one, they began walking away. Gabriel's phone buzzed. 11:51. "I need to send that cancellation code," he said. "No," Ella said suddenly. "Don't." Gabriel stared at her. "Ella, if I don't, the story goes public. Everything comes out." "Good." Ella's eyes were blazing. "Let it all come out. Let the world know what Charles did, what Amy did, what we all did. Let Sophie grow up in a world where the truth matters more than protecting powerful people." Gabriel looked at his phone. 11:52. He put it back in his pocket without sending the code. "Together?" he asked. "Together," Ella agreed. They walked toward the motorcycle, where their daughter's face smiled at them from Amy's phone screen, and toward a future they would build on truth instead of lies. At midnight, 3 newspapers simultaneously published the story of the Morrison Industries conspiracy, the fake death of Ella Morrison, and the 20-year cover-up that had shaped 2 industries and countless lives. By morning, the world would know everything. But Gabriel and Ella were already gone, racing through the night toward Switzerland, toward their daughter, toward a life they would finally get to choose for themselves. The Swiss authorities were waiting for them at the airport. Gabriel saw the uniforms first. 6 officers in tactical gear positioned around the private terminal where their jet had landed. His pilot, Marcus Webb, met them at the bottom of the aircraft stairs with a grim expression. "Sir, I'm sorry. I had to file a flight plan. When your names hit the international database." Marcus gestured helplessly toward the officers. "The warrant came through 20 minutes ago." Gabriel felt Ella's hand tighten in his. They'd spent the 8-hour flight from New York planning their approach, calling in favors, arranging for legal representation in Switzerland. They'd been so focused on reaching Sophie that they'd forgotten they were now wanted fugitives. "Interpol?" Gabriel asked. "Fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to murder," one of the officers said in accented English as he approached. "You are Gabriel Chun and Elena Morrison?" "We're here for my daughter," Ella said, stepping forward. "She's 6 years old, and she's being held against her will." The officer consulted his tablet. "There is no record of a Sophie Morrison or Sophie Chun in Switzerland. No record of any child matching that description entering the country in the past month." Gabriel's blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. We have video evidence. Phone calls. May I see this evidence?" Gabriel pulled out his phone, but the video Amy had shown them was gone. The call history was empty. Even the photos of Sophie that Ella had shown him were missing. "This is impossible," Ella whispered, frantically scrolling through her own phone. "She was here. I talked to her last night." The officer's expression softened slightly. "Ms. Morrison, our records show that Charles Lancaster was found dead in the United States 12 hours ago. Our investigation suggests that you and Mr. Chun may be victims of an elaborate deception. But you still must come with us for questioning." "No." Ella backed away from the officers. "No, I'm not leaving without Sophie. She's here. I know she's here." "Ella," Gabriel said gently, reaching for her arm. "We need to go with them. We need to figure out what's happening. Don't you understand?" Ella spun to face him, her eyes wild with panic. "If Sophie isn't here, if she was never here, then where is she? Where is my daughter, Gabriel?" Before Gabriel could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. * Sophie is safe. For now. Zurich train station, platform 7, 1 hour. Come alone or she disappears forever. *. Gabriel showed Ella the message. Her face went white. "Amy," she breathed. The lead officer stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but you cannot leave this airport. You are both under arrest pending extradition to the United States." "You don't understand," Gabriel said desperately. "Our daughter." "There is no daughter," the officer said firmly. "Not according to any official records. Whatever game is being played here, it ends now." Gabriel looked at Ella, saw the desperation in her eyes, the way she was calculating distances to the exit, to the fence line, to any possible escape. He knew that look. He'd seen it on her face when they were children, and she was about to do something reckless. "Don't," he warned quietly. But Ella was already moving. She sprinted toward the airport perimeter, where a maintenance truck was idling near the fence. Gabriel saw her plan immediately. She was going to steal the truck, ram through the fence, and somehow make it to Zurich before Amy disappeared with Sophie. It was suicide. "Ella, stop!" Gabriel broke away from the officers and ran after her. The sound of the first gunshot stopped them both in their tracks. Not aimed at them, a warning shot into the air. But the message was clear. Ella turned back to Gabriel, tears streaming down her face. "I can't let her take Sophie. I can't lose her again." "You won't," Gabriel said, though he had no idea how he could promise that. "We'll find another way." The officers surrounded them, weapons drawn but pointed at the ground. The lead officer spoke into his radio in rapid German, then turned back to them. "There has been a development," he said. "The American authorities wish to speak with you immediately via secure video conference. It seems there are complications with your case." 20 minutes later, Gabriel and Ella found themselves in a sterile conference room at the airport, staring at a laptop screen that showed FBI agent Sarah Chun, no relation to Gabriel despite the name, sitting across from Amy Chun in what looked like a federal interrogation room. "Mr. Chun, Ms. Morrison," Agent Chun said, "I need you to listen very carefully to what your sister is about to tell us." Amy looked different on the screen, smaller, older, defeated. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "The child never existed," Amy said. Gabriel felt the words hit him like a physical blow. "What?" "Sophie Morrison Chun. She never existed. The birth certificate is fake. The medical records are fake. The videos, the phone calls, the photos, all fabricated using deep fake technology and actors." Ella made a sound like a wounded animal. No, that's not possible. I held her. I gave birth to her. I raised her for 6 years." Amy looked directly into the camera. "Ella, you've been in psychiatric care for 3 years. Severe dissociative disorder brought on by trauma. You created Sophie as a coping mechanism for losing Gabriel, for losing your parents, for losing everything. Charles didn't kidnap your daughter. He's been paying for your treatment." The room started spinning. Gabriel gripped the edge of the table. "That's not true. Ella's been living with Charles for 20 years. She's been planning this revenge." "Gabriel, there was no revenge plot," Amy continued. "Ella escaped from a psychiatric facility 6 months ago. She's been living in a fantasy world, believing she had a daughter, believing Charles was holding her hostage. The wedding, the marriage certificate, even the merger documents, all forgeries created by someone with a severe break from reality." "No," Ella whispered. "No, that's not. I remember everything. I remember her first words, her first steps. I remember teaching her to read." Agent Chen leaned forward. "Ms. Morrison, we have security footage from the psychiatric facility showing you in therapy sessions where you talked extensively about your imaginary daughter. We have medical records documenting your treatment for severe dissociative episodes. And we have testimony from multiple doctors who have been treating you for trauma-induced psychosis." Gabriel turned to look at Ella, and for the first time, he really saw her. The way her clothes didn't quite fit right, as if she'd lost weight recently. The way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. The way she sometimes stared at nothing, as if listening to voices only she could hear. "Ella," he said gently, "is it true? Is any of this true?" Ella stared at him with eyes that were suddenly very young and very lost. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what's real anymore." Agent Chen's voice cut through the moment. "There's more. Ms. Morrison never graduated from psychiatric care. She escaped from the facility using forged documents and has been missing for 6 months. The facility has been looking for her, worried that she might hurt herself or others in her delusional state." "What about Charles Lancaster?" Gabriel asked. "What about his murder?" "Charles Lancaster died of a heart attack 3 hours ago," Agent Chen replied. "He was alone in his study when it happened. There were no gunshot wounds, no signs of foul play. Amy Chun is in custody for fraud and conspiracy related to your business dealings, but there was no murder. Gabriel felt reality crashing down around him. The men with guns. The chase. The threats against Sophie. All in Ella's head, Amy said sadly. Gabriel, when she showed up at your house claiming to be Elena Lancaster, I tried to tell you something was wrong. But you wanted to believe it so badly. You wanted her to be real so badly that you ignored all the signs. What signs? Ella asked, her voice breaking. Gabriel closed his eyes and tried to remember. The wedding. Had there really been 500 guests, or had it been a small, quiet ceremony with just a handful of people? The chase through Charles's house. Had they really been running from armed men, or had it been security guards trying to help a mentally ill woman? The motorcycle ride. The secret passages. The confrontation with Charles's men. How much of it had been real? How much had been shared delusion? Two traumatized people feeding each other's fantasies. The patents, Gabriel said suddenly. I transferred the Morrison Industries patents back to Ella. That was real. You transferred them to Elena Lancaster, Agent Chin corrected. A legal entity that doesn't exist. The transfers are void. Your business is intact, Mr. Chin, though you'll face questions about the irregularities in your accounting that Amy was responsible for. Gabriel looked at Ella again. She was rocking slightly in her chair, humming something under her breath. A lullaby, he realized. The kind a mother might sing to a child who existed only in her broken mind. What happens now? Gabriel asked. Ms. Morrison returns to psychiatric care, Agent Chin said. She needs help, Mr. Chin. Real help. The kind of help that can only happen in a controlled environment with trained professionals. And me, you'll be extradited to face questioning about the financial irregularities in your business. But given Amy's confession and the evidence of your sister's manipulation, it's likely you'll face minimal charges. Gabriel nodded slowly. He understood what they were telling him. He could walk away, return to his life, rebuild his empire, pretend none of this had ever happened. Ella would disappear back into institutional care, and he would be free to forget her again. The safe choice. The logical choice. The choice that would destroy what was left of his soul. I want to visit her, Gabriel said suddenly. Agent Chin frowned. Mr. Chin, that's not advisable. Ms. Morrison's attachment to you is part of her delusion. Contact with you could make her condition worse. I don't care. Gabriel looked at Ella, who was still humming, still rocking, still holding an invisible child in her arms. She's been alone for 20 years. I'm not letting her be alone anymore. Gabriel. Amy's voice came through the laptop speaker. Please. Think about what you're saying. Think about your life, your future. She's sick. She needs professional help, not romantic delusions. Gabriel met his sister's eyes through the screen. Amy, you spent 15 years protecting me from pain by lying to me. I'm not going to spend the next 15 years protecting myself from pain by abandoning the woman I love. She doesn't love you, Amy said desperately. She loves the memory of a boy who died when she was 13. You can't save her, Gabriel. You can't fix 20 years of trauma with good intentions. Gabriel turned back to Ella. She had stopped humming and was looking at him with clear, lucid eyes for the first time since they'd entered the room. Do you remember? She asked quietly. Do you remember the fort we built in the woods? Do you remember the promises we made? Gabriel's throat tightened. I remember. I know I'm sick, Ella continued, her voice steady now. I know Sophie isn't real. I know most of what happened tonight was in my head. But Gabriel, the love is real. What I feel for you, what I've always felt for you. That's the only thing I'm sure of anymore. Gabriel reached across the table and took her hand. Then that's enough. That's all we need. Agent Chin cleared her throat. Mr. Chin, I need you to understand what you're committing to. Ms. Morrison will require years of treatment. She may never fully recover. She will have good days and bad days, and the bad days will be very bad. You could lose everything trying to help someone who may never be able to love you back in a healthy way. Gabriel squeezed Ella's hand. Agent Chin, I've spent 20 years building an empire, and it never made me happy. I've spent 20 years trying to forget the only person who ever mattered to me, and it nearly destroyed my soul. If I have to choose between having everything and having her, I choose her. Every time. The Swiss officers were speaking quietly among themselves. Finally, the lead officer approached. Mr. Chin, given the circumstances, we are prepared to release you both into the custody of the American authorities. Ms. Morrison will be transported to a psychiatric facility for evaluation and treatment. You may accompany her if you wish, but you will be restricted to supervised visits until her doctors determine what is best for her recovery. Gabriel nodded. I understand. Ella looked up at him with eyes that were suddenly very young and very afraid. Gabriel, what if I never get better? What if I'm always going to be broken? Gabriel leaned down and kissed her forehead, the same way he used to when they were children and she was scared of thunderstorms. Then we'll be broken together, he said. And maybe that's enough. The last thing Gabriel saw as they led Ella away was her turning back to look at him, her lips moving in words he couldn't hear, but somehow understood. I love you too. Outside the conference room windows, snow was beginning to fall over the Swiss mountains, covering the world in white. A new beginning, or maybe just another ending. Gabriel wasn't sure anymore. All he knew was that this time, he wasn't walking away. This time, he was going to fight for love, even if love was just an illusion shared between two broken people who had found each other again in the darkness. Even if it destroyed him. Especially if it destroyed him. 3 weeks later, Gabriel sat in the visiting room of Clearwater Psychiatric Institute outside Boston, watching Ella through reinforced glass. She was drawing again. Dr. Sarah Patel had told him it was a good sign, that Ella's art therapy sessions were helping her process trauma and distinguish between memory and fantasy. Today she was sketching what looked like a house, but as Gabriel watched, he realized it was their childhood fort in the woods, rendered with the precise detail of someone trying to hold on to the only real thing left in her world. She's been asking for you, Dr. Patel said, settling into the chair beside Gabriel. Every day. She wants to know when you're coming back to take her home. Gabriel's chest tightened. What do you tell her? The truth. That home isn't a place you go back to. It's something you build. And right now, she's not well enough to build anything. Gabriel had been coming here every day for 3 weeks, ever since his own legal proceedings had concluded. The FBI had cleared him of criminal wrongdoing, though the scandal had destroyed his business empire. His assets were frozen, his board had removed him as CEO, and his investors had fled. 20 years of work gone. He should have cared more than he did. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said quietly, I need to know. How much of what happened that night was real? Dr. Patel consulted her notes. The wedding was real, though there were only 12 people present, not 500. The marriage certificate was legally filed, though under Ella's assumed identity. The confrontation with Charles Lancaster was real, though there were no armed men, just Charles, his nurse, and 2 security guards who were trying to help when Ella became agitated. And Charles's death? Heart attack brought on by stress. His own cardiologist had been warning him for months that his condition was deteriorating. Dr. Patel looked at Gabriel carefully. Mr. Chin, Ella's delusions were vivid, but they were based on real events and real people. Charles Lancaster did manipulate your business dealings. Your sister Amy did conspire to hide information from you. The Morrison Industries patents were real, and you did participate in actions that harmed Ella's family legacy. Gabriel felt the familiar weight of guilt settle on his shoulders. So some of her anger was justified. All of her anger was justified. But her methods of expressing that anger, her complete break from reality, that's the illness talking. Through the glass, Ella looked up from her drawing and smiled when she saw Gabriel. She pressed her hand against the window, and he pressed his hand against the other side, their palms separated by inches and institutional policies. She's been having breakthrough moments, Dr. Patel continued. Yesterday she acknowledged that Sophie isn't real. She cried for 2 hours, grieving the loss of a child who never existed. It was devastating to watch, but it was also progress. Gabriel's phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. Lancaster estate settlement finalized. Charles left everything to Elena Morrison in his will. $47 million. Legally yours now as her husband. Gabriel stared at the message. Charles's final manipulation, even from beyond the grave. The old man had known exactly what he was doing, giving Gabriel the resources to care for Ella while binding them together legally and financially. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said slowly, what would it take for Ella to be released into my care? The doctor's expression grew concerned. Mr. Chun, that's not something we typically recommend. Ella needs months, possibly years of intensive treatment. The kind of care she requires is specialized, expensive, and emotionally exhausting. Most families burn out within the first year. I'm not most families. No, you're not. Dr. Patel studied him carefully. You're a man who's never dealt with his own trauma, trying to save a woman whose trauma has consumed her reality. That's not love, Mr. Chin. That's codependency. Gabriel felt anger flare in his chest. You don't know anything about what I feel for her. Don't I? Dr. Patel leaned forward. You've been here every day for 3 weeks. You've liquidated your remaining assets to pay for her care. You've turned down 3 job offers because they would require you to travel. You're rebuilding your entire life around a woman who may never be able to have a healthy relationship with anyone. She's my wife. She's a mentally ill woman who married you while experiencing a psychotic break. The marriage isn't legally valid, and even if it were, love isn't enough to cure 20 years of psychiatric damage. Gabriel looked at Ella again. She was holding up her drawing for him to see, their childhood fort, but with 2 adult figures standing beside it. Him and her, the way they might have been if the accident had never happened. What if I could provide the right kind of care? Gabriel asked. Private nurses, therapists, whatever she needs. What if I could create an environment where she could heal? Dr. Patel was quiet for a long moment. There is a program, she said finally. Experimental. For patients with severe trauma-related dissociative disorders. It involves creating a controlled, home-like environment with round-the-clock psychiatric support. But it's incredibly expensive. How expensive? $2 million per year. And there's no guarantee it would work. Some patients thrive in that environment. Others deteriorate further when removed from the structure of institutional care. Gabriel pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. Martin, I need you to liquidate everything. The house, the cars, the art collection, everything. Put all proceeds into an account for Ella's medical care. Gabriel, are you sure about this? You'd be giving up your safety net. If this doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Gabriel ended the call and turned back to Dr. Patel. When can we start? Dr. Patel looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Mr. Chen, I need you to understand what you're committing to. This program requires the family member to live on site, to participate in all therapy sessions, to essentially rebuild their entire life around the patient's needs. You would have no privacy, no independence, no guarantee of success. And if Ella doesn't improve, if she gets worse, you'll have sacrificed everything for nothing. Gabriel thought about his empire, his reputation, the life he'd spent 20 years building. Then he thought about 13-year-old Ella Morrison, laughing as she beat him in a race to the lake. He thought about the promise he'd made to love her forever, and how he'd broken that promise by choosing safety over courage. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said quietly, 20 years ago, I made a choice to protect myself from pain by forgetting the most important person in my world. That choice turned me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could participate in destroying innocent people's lives without asking questions. Someone who valued money over morality, success over soul. He paused, watching Ella through the glass. She was drawing again, adding details to their fort with the careful concentration of someone trying to remember paradise. I can't change what I did, Gabriel continued. I can't bring back her parents or give her back the 20 years Charles stole from her. But I can choose differently this time. I can choose love over safety, hope over certainty, even if it destroys me. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. And if she never gets better? If she never becomes the woman you remember from your childhood? Then I'll love the woman she is now. Broken, struggling, imperfect, but real. More real than anything I ever built with money and ambition. Through the glass, Ella looked up and mouthed words he couldn't hear but somehow understood. Are you staying? Gabriel pressed both hands against the window and mouthed back, forever. Ella smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen from her since their wedding night, and went back to her drawing. But now she was adding something new to the picture. A small house beside the fort, with smoke rising from the chimney and flowers in the yard. A home they could build together, one careful line at a time. Dr. Patel stood up. I'll make the calls. The program has a facility in Vermont, on 50 acres of private land. It's isolated, peaceful, and staffed with the best trauma specialists in the country. If you're serious about this, I'm serious. Then we'll start the paperwork tomorrow. But Mr. Chen, I need you to understand one more thing. This isn't a fairy tale. Ella may improve enough to have a functional life, or she may not. You may grow old together, or you may spend the next 40 years caring for someone who never fully comes back to you. Are you prepared for that reality? Gabriel looked at Ella one more time. She was holding up her new drawing, their fort, their house, and now a small garden where 2 figures knelt side by side, planting something in the earth. growing something together, building something that could last. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said, I've spent 20 years living in a world built on lies, manipulation, and the pursuit of things that didn't matter. If I have to choose between that world and a life spent caring for the woman I love, even if she's broken, even if she never gets better, that's not a choice at all. He stood up, his decision made, his future uncertain, but finally, for the first time in 20 years, aligned with his heart. When do we leave for Vermont? Dr. Patel smiled. As soon as you're ready to begin the hardest and most important work of your life. Gabriel looked at Ella through the glass one more time. She was writing something on her drawing now, words he couldn't read from this distance, but somehow knew by heart. Love you forever. The same words they'd whispered to each other as children, hiding in their fort, planning a future that had been stolen from them but maybe, just maybe, could still be reclaimed. Not the same future. That was gone forever. But a different one. Harder, uncertain, requiring everything he had to give and more. But real. Finally, beautifully, painfully real. I'm ready, Gabriel said. And for the first time in 20 years, he meant it. 3 weeks later, Gabriel sat in the visiting room of Clearwater Psychiatric Institute outside Boston, watching Ella through reinforced glass. She was drawing again. Dr. Sarah Patel had told him it was a good sign. That Ella's art therapy sessions were helping her process trauma and distinguish between memory and fantasy. Today she was sketching what looked like a house, but as Gabriel watched, he realized it was their childhood fort in the woods, rendered with the precise detail of someone trying to hold on to the only real thing left in her world. She's been asking for you, Dr. Patel said, settling into the chair beside Gabriel. Every day. She wants to know when you're coming back to take her home. Gabriel's chest tightened. What do you tell her? The truth. That home isn't a place you go back to. It's something you build. And right now, she's not well enough to build anything. Gabriel had been coming here every day for 3 weeks, ever since his own legal proceedings had concluded. The FBI had cleared him of criminal wrongdoing, though the scandal had destroyed his business empire. His assets were frozen, his board had removed him as CEO, and his investors had fled. 20 years of work gone. He should have cared more than he did. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said quietly, I need to know. How much of what happened that night was real? Dr. Patel consulted her notes. The wedding was real, though there were only 12 people present, not 500. The marriage certificate was legally filed, though under Ella's assumed identity. The confrontation with Charles Lancaster was real, though there were no armed men, just Charles, his nurse, and 2 security guards who were trying to help when Ella became agitated. And Charles's death? Heart attack brought on by stress. His own cardiologist had been warning him for months that his condition was deteriorating. Dr. Patel looked at Gabriel carefully. Mr. Chin, Ella's delusions were vivid, but they were based on real events and real people. Charles Lancaster did manipulate your business dealings. Your sister Amy did conspire to hide information from you. The Morrison Industries patents were real, and you did participate in actions that harmed Ella's family legacy. Gabriel felt the familiar weight of guilt settle on his shoulders. So some of her anger was justified. All of her anger was justified. But her methods of expressing that anger, her complete break from reality, that's the illness talking. Through the glass, Ella looked up from her drawing and smiled when she saw Gabriel. She pressed her hand against the window, and he pressed his hand against the other side, their palms separated by inches and institutional policies. She's been having breakthrough moments, Dr. Patel continued. Yesterday she acknowledged that Sophie isn't real. She cried for 2 hours, grieving the loss of a child who never existed. It was devastating to watch, but it was also progress. Gabriel's phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. * Lancaster estate settlement finalized. Charles left everything to Elena Morrison in his will. $47 million. Legally yours now as her husband. *. Gabriel stared at the message. Charles's final manipulation, even from beyond the grave. The old man had known exactly what he was doing, giving Gabriel the resources to care for Ella while binding them together legally and financially. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said slowly, what would it take for Ella to be released into my care? The doctor's expression grew concerned. Mr. Chin, that's not something we typically recommend. Ella needs months, possibly years of intensive treatment. The kind of care she requires is specialized, expensive, and emotionally exhausting. Most families burn out within the first year. I'm not most families. No, you're not. Dr. Patel studied him carefully. You're a man who's never dealt with his own trauma, trying to save a woman whose trauma has consumed her reality. That's not love, Mr. Chin. That's codependency. Gabriel felt anger flare in his chest. You don't know anything about what I feel for her. Don't I? Dr. Patel leaned forward. You've been here every day for 3 weeks. You've liquidated your remaining assets to pay for her care. You've turned down 3 job offers because they would require you to travel. You're rebuilding your entire life around a woman who may never be able to have a healthy relationship with anyone. She's my wife. She's a mentally ill woman who married you while experiencing a psychotic break. The marriage isn't legally valid, and even if it were, love isn't enough to cure 20 years of psychiatric damage. Gabriel looked at Ella again. She was holding up her drawing for him to see, their childhood fort, but with 2 adult figures standing beside it. Him and her, the way they might have been if the accident had never happened. What if I could provide the right kind of care? Gabriel asked. Private nurses, therapists, whatever she needs. What if I could create an environment where she could heal? Dr. Patel was quiet for a long moment. There is a program, she said finally. Experimental. For patients with severe trauma-related dissociative disorders. It involves creating a controlled, home-like environment with round-the-clock psychiatric support. But it's incredibly expensive. How expensive? $2 million per year. And there's no guarantee it would work. Some patients thrive in that environment. Others deteriorate further when removed from the structure of institutional care. Gabriel pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. Martin, I need you to liquidate everything. The house, the cars, the art collection, everything. Put all proceeds into an account for Ella's medical care. Gabriel, are you sure about this? You'd be giving up your safety net. If this doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Gabriel ended the call and turned back to Dr. Patel. When can we start? Dr. Patel looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Mr. Chen, I need you to understand what you're committing to. This program requires the family member to live on-site, to participate in all therapy sessions, to essentially rebuild their entire life around the patient's needs. You would have no privacy, no independence, no guarantee of success. And if Ella doesn't improve, if she gets worse, you'll have sacrificed everything for nothing. Gabriel thought about his empire, his reputation, the life he'd spent 20 years building. Then he thought about 13-year-old Ella Morrison, laughing as she beat him in a race to the lake. He thought about the promise he'd made to love her forever, and how he'd broken that promise by choosing safety over courage. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said quietly, 20 years ago, I made a choice to protect myself from pain by forgetting the most important person in my world. That choice turned me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could participate in destroying innocent people's lives without asking questions. Someone who valued money over morality, success over soul. He paused, watching Ella through the glass. She was drawing again, adding details to their fort with the careful concentration of someone trying to remember paradise. I can't change what I did, Gabriel continued. I can't bring back her parents or give her back the 20 years Charles stole from her. But I can choose differently this time. I can choose love over safety, hope over certainty, even if it destroys me. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. And if she never gets better? If she never becomes the woman you remember from your childhood, then I'll love the woman she is now. Broken, struggling, imperfect, but real. More real than anything I ever built with money and ambition. Through the glass, Ella looked up and mouthed words he couldn't hear but somehow understood. Are you staying? Gabriel pressed both hands against the window and mouthed back, forever. Ella smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen from her since their wedding night, and went back to her drawing. But now she was adding something new to the picture. A small house beside the fort, with smoke rising from the chimney and flowers in the yard. A home they could build together, one careful line at a time. Dr. Patel stood up. I'll make the calls. The program has a facility in Vermont, on 50 acres of private land. It's isolated, peaceful, and staffed with the best trauma specialists in the country. If you're serious about this. I'm serious. Then we'll start the paperwork tomorrow. But Mr. Chen, I need you to understand one more thing. This isn't a fairy tale. Ella may improve enough to have a functional life, or she may not. You may grow old together, or you may spend the next 40 years caring for someone who never fully comes back to you. Are you prepared for that reality? Gabriel looked at Ella one more time. She was holding up her new drawing, their fort, their house, and now a small garden where two figures knelt side by side, planting something in the earth. Growing something together. Building something that could last. Dr. Patel, Gabriel said, I've spent 20 years living in a world built on lies, manipulation, and the pursuit of things that didn't matter. If I have to choose between that world and a life spent caring for the woman I love, even if she's broken, even if she never gets better, that's not a choice at all. He stood up, his decision made, his future uncertain, but finally, for the first time in 20 years, aligned with his heart. When do we leave for Vermont? Dr. Patel smiled. As soon as you're ready to begin the hardest and most important work of your life. Gabriel looked at Ella through the glass one more time. She was writing something on her drawing now, words he couldn't read from this distance, but somehow knew by heart. Love you forever. The same words they'd whispered to each other as children, hiding in their fort, planning a future that had been stolen from them but maybe, just maybe, could still be reclaimed. Not the same future, that was gone forever, but a different one. Harder, uncertain, requiring everything he had to give and more. But real. Finally, beautifully, painfully real. I'm ready, Gabriel said. And for the first time in 20 years, he meant it. 2 years later, Gabriel stood at the altar of the same church where their story had begun. But everything was different now. The sanctuary was filled with real guests this time. Not society vultures hungry for spectacle, but the families of Morrison Industries employees who had gotten their jobs back. The men and women whose livelihoods had been restored when Gabriel and Ella rebuilt the company from the ground up. Stronger and more ethical than it had ever been. Ella walked toward him down the same aisle, but there was no veil hiding her face this time. Her smile was radiant, unguarded, real. She wore a simple white dress she'd chosen herself, not the elaborate gown Charles had selected for his manipulative theater. This time, Gabriel wasn't trembling with dread. His hands were steady, his heart full of certainty rather than fear. Do you, Gabriel Chun, take Ella Morrison to be your lawfully wedded wife? Father Martinez asked, the same priest who had married them 2 years ago, but who now understood he was witnessing a love story rather than presiding over a conspiracy. I do, Gabriel said, his voice strong and clear. I absolutely do. And do you, Ella Morrison, take Gabriel Chun to be your lawfully wedded husband? Ella's eyes sparkled with tears of joy rather than decades of suppressed pain. I do. Forever and always I do. Then by the power vested in me, and with the love and support of this community, I pronounce you husband and wife. Father Martinez smiled. Gabriel, you may kiss your bride. Gabriel lifted Ella in his arms and spun her around as the congregation erupted in genuine celebration. When he set her down, she was laughing, the same wild, joyful sound that had made him fall in love with her when they were 8 years old. We did it, she whispered against his lips. We actually did it. Together, Gabriel replied, echoing the promise they'd made to each other through 20 years of separation and pain. The reception was held in the gardens of their Vermont home, which had become a symbol of healing not just for them, but for everyone whose lives had been touched by Charles Lancaster's crimes. The FBI investigation had uncovered decades of financial manipulation, revealing that Charles had destroyed dozens of families and businesses in his obsessive quest for control. Amy Chin sat at the family table, sober for 18 months now and working as a victim's advocate for financial fraud survivors. She'd served 6 months in minimum security prison, but Gabriel and Ella had visited her every week, helping her rebuild her sense of self-worth through service to others. I'm proud of you both, Amy said as Gabriel and Ella joined her at the table. 2 years ago, I thought I was saving Gabriel from delusion. Now I see that you two saved each other from despair. Gabriel squeezed his sister's hand. We all saved each other, Amy. That's what family does. Dr. Martinez approached their table, carrying an envelope. Ella, this came for you today. From the Morrison Industries Scholarship Fund. Ella opened the letter and her face lit up. Gabriel, look at this. Sophie Williams from Portland. She's the first recipient of our Childhood Trauma Recovery Scholarship. Full ride to MIT for engineering. Gabriel smiled. They'd named the scholarship after Ella's imaginary daughter, turning a painful delusion into a force for healing real children. It was one of dozens of programs they'd created through the rebuilt Morrison Industries, focusing on mental health support, family services, and community rebuilding. That makes 47 scholarships this year, Gabriel said. 47 kids who'll get opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. 47 Sophies who get to be real, Ella added softly. As the sun began to set over the mountains, Gabriel found himself standing exactly where he'd been on their wedding night 2 years ago, on the edge of the property, looking out over the valley below. But this time, he wasn't running from armed men or wrestling with impossible choices. This time, he was simply watching his wife dance with their guests, her laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Having second thoughts? Ella's voice came from behind him. Gabriel turned to find her approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, her wedding dress slightly rumpled from dancing with children whose parents worked for their company. "Never," Gabriel said, accepting the champagne. "I was just thinking about the last time we stood here together. When we were running for our lives." Ella settled beside him on the garden bench they'd built together. "When we were running toward our lives," Gabriel corrected. "We just didn't know it yet." Ella curled into his side, fitting perfectly against him the way she had since they were children. "Gabriel, do you ever regret it? Giving up your empire, your old life, everything you'd built?" Gabriel considered the question seriously. 2 years ago, he'd been worth $12 billion. Today, he was worth maybe 12 million, still wealthy by any standard, but no longer a titan of industry. He'd traded boardrooms for therapy sessions, corporate mergers for community gardens, power lunches for actual lunch with his wife in their kitchen. "Ella," he said finally, 2 years ago I was the richest man I knew and the emptiest. I had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. Now I have you, I have Amy back, I have work that helps people instead of exploiting them. I have a life instead of just a portfolio. Even when the nightmares come back. Even when I have bad days and can't get out of bed." Gabriel kissed the top of her head. "Especially then. Because those are the days when love matters most. When being present for each other isn't easy or convenient or profitable. That's when it becomes real." Ella was quiet for a moment, watching their guests. Amy was helping elderly Mrs. Patterson from accounting into a chair. Dr. Martinez was laughing with a group of teenagers whose college tuition they'd sponsored. Their lawyer, Martin Webb, was dancing badly but enthusiastically with his wife of 30 years. "I love our life," Ella said simply. "Even though it's messy? Even though we're still figuring things out. Because it's messy. Because we're figuring it out together." Ella tilted her face up to look at him. "Gabriel, do you remember what you said to me that first night in the psychiatric hospital? When I asked what would happen if I never got better?" Gabriel remembered. "I said we'd be broken together. And you were right. We are broken, in ways we'll probably never fully heal from. But we're broken together, and that makes us stronger than we ever were apart." As if summoned by their conversation, fireflies began to rise from the garden, tiny points of light dancing in the gathering darkness. Gabriel watched them with wonder, remembering how he and Ella used to chase fireflies as children, making wishes on their flickering light. "Make a wish," Ella whispered, just like she used to when they were 8 years old. Gabriel closed his eyes and made the same wish he'd been making for 20 years, that he would be worthy of Ella Morrison's love. But this time, for the first time, he believed it might actually come true. When he opened his eyes, Ella was smiling at him with an expression of pure contentment. "What did you wish for?" she asked. "Can't tell you, or it won't come true." "It already has come true," Ella said softly. "Whatever you wished for, Gabriel, it already has come true." They sat together in comfortable silence as the party continued around them. Two people who had found their way back to each other across 2 decades of loss and manipulation and pain. They weren't the same children who had built forts in the woods and planned imaginary weddings. They were scarred, complicated, still healing adults who had chosen to build something real together. Something that would last. As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Gabriel and Ella walked hand in hand through the house they'd created together. Not a mansion designed to impress, but a home filled with Ella's artwork, Gabriel's books, photographs of the life they were building one day at a time. In their bedroom, Ella turned to Gabriel with an expression he couldn't quite read. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. Gabriel's heart skipped. After everything they'd been through, those words still carried the potential for devastation. "What is it?" Ella smiled, and suddenly Gabriel realized her expression wasn't mysterious, it was mischievous. The same look she'd worn as a child when she was planning something wonderful. "I'm pregnant," she said simply. Gabriel stared at her, his mind reeling. "But the doctor said, after the trauma, after the medications. Dr. Martinez says it's rare but not impossible. Sometimes healing creates space for new life." Ella took his hands and placed them on her still flat stomach. "Gabriel, we're going to have a baby. A real baby this time. Gabriel felt tears streaming down his face as he pulled Ella into his arms. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," she admitted. "But the good kind of terrified. The kind that comes with hope instead of fear." Gabriel kissed her then, tasting salt and joy and the promise of a future they would write together. Outside their window, fireflies continued their ancient dance, and somewhere in the distance, the train that had carried them away from their old lives whistled as it rounded the mountain toward destinations unknown. But Gabriel and Ella were exactly where they belonged, in each other's arms, in the home they'd built from love and forgiveness and the stubborn belief that broken things could be made beautiful again. "I love you," Gabriel whispered against her hair. "I love you, I love our baby, I love the life we're building together." "Forever?" Ella asked, echoing the promise they'd made as children. "Forever," Gabriel confirmed. And this time, forever felt not like a burden or an impossible dream, but like the most natural thing in the world. Like coming home. What did this story teach you about the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds? About the courage it takes to choose hope over fear, even when the odds seem impossible. Gabriel and Ella's journey shows us that sometimes the most beautiful love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about broken people choosing to heal together, one day at a time. Drop your thoughts in the comments about which moment moved you most, and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world. Because love isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we choose again and again, especially when it's hardest to choose. What would you sacrifice for true love? What would you rebuild from the ashes of your past? Share your story below.